Thank you so much for coming. And
Of
I
course.
recently came across your book and I was reading up I just went on ChatGPT and I was asking ChatGPT, just tell me the best professors at Rutgers who I can talk and have a podcast with. And your name came like on the top on that list. I was like, okay, let's reach out to her. And then I came across your books. You have written a series of books on body image. And
Right.
personally, like I don't have this concept of body image. Like, I'll be like honest and like blunt about it. And because that's why I want to do this podcast and learn more about it. I don't have
Okay.
this concept of body image. Like, what's the problem? What exactly body image means and why this thing is so important nowadays. So, you know what?
hmm
Like, let's start with like explaining what exactly body image and why is it important.
Yeah. So, body image is really an integral part of our sense of self, and it has far-reaching implications for both our mental and physical health. So, oftentimes, body image scientists will say that body image is how we think and feel about our bodies and appearance.
Mhm.
But I think that's a really limited definition that relies on sort of the more superficial exterior components, when we know that body image really has much more to do with not just our appearance, but how comfortable we really are with ourselves. And that then has implications for our health behaviors, things like how we eat, our activity levels, even substance use behaviors. It's also related to our interpersonal experiences. So, how do we engage with other people and our world?
Mhm.
And it's associated with mental health in general. So, not just eating disorders, but also anxiety and depression and some other mental health issues. So, I think that body image, or how comfortable we are essentially with ourselves, kind of bleeds into all other aspects of our lives.
Is it like how we look exactly like, in front of people? Is that exactly body image?
No, it's really not just how we look. It's like I said, it's really much more how comfortable we feel with ourselves, how comfortable we
Mhm.
feel sort of in terms of our physical presence, but also psychologically speaking.
Got it. And because you mentioned the psychological part, so like, to start off this conversation, like I want to touch on few points which are like very important to touch upon, like when we talk about body image, that like validation is one of the key thing like which people seek from the society, and I think that's something
Right.
which leads to this problem, right? So like, do you know like why do humans crave for validation so deeply? Like, is it more about being loved or like being seen?
I think it's about feeling connected to other people. And psychologists know that feeling connected to other people is a really important contributor to our overall happiness and satisfaction with our lives. So, if we don't feel any kind of real connection with people because we're focused on ourselves and we're worried about our own issues, to put it generally, then we can have a hard time, really forming those relationships with other people.
Mhm.
And and so I don't think it's just validation or being
Mhm.
seen, but just being connected in a variety of ways, because then those connections can, I think, maybe lead to the validation, can lead to social support, can lead to companionship, can lead to
Right.
love.
Right. And I think yeah, that's the core of that's the core problem. It's all about like that acceptance in front of the society and the people you love eventually. And I think that's why these mental health problems based on body image comes across. But do you know like is there any evolutionary reasoning behind body image? Because how you look, that completely toned social media sort of thing, it's very recent, right? But body image, like you have been living in this body since like ages, right? There should be some sort of evolutionary reason behind this. Like, can we just talk about that?
So, body image researchers have considered different, and actually just behavioral geneticists and other psychologists have tried to understand what
Mhm.
sort of appearance factors might be evolutionarily valuable, right? So we know that youth is valued
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
looking young is
Yeah.
valued. We know that looking healthy is valued, right? And it would make sense because everything, when we're talking about sort of evolutionary value, we usually are thinking in terms of like, well, if you mate with someone who's young and healthy, then that means that you're more apt to be able to produce offspring that will be young and healthy and able to survive, right? And
Yeah.
and beauty is also often valued,
Yeah.
evolutionarily speaking, because beauty may be a proxy for health, right? People,
Mhm.
like, even though our perceptions of beauty have changed in some ways across time historically, certain things are kind of consistently valued,
Mhm.
and symmetry is one of them. So when people
Yeah.
look symmetrical, and again, that's oftentimes just indicative of someone not being disabled or injured or otherwise potentially
Right.
unhealthy. So these things are kind of, I think, intermeshed when we talk about
Mhm.
evolutionary value. That beauty and health and youth
Right.
are often viewed in terms of, and of course, this isn't, when we talk about evolution, we're not talking about people being aware that they're
Mhm.
looking for these things so that they
Mhm.
can successfully reproduce, right? It's not that simple. But in terms of survival of the species, it's entirely possible that we are hardwired to have those preferences.
Yeah. So basically, like it sets out that base, and then on that base, like the evolution happens, and decades come and go, and then we just figure out some new things on the top of it, and then those new things become the new norms for the people, and
Right,
it sets in like new body image or like new beauty standards. Because,
right.
but you said, like, I think evolutionarily it's more about like finding your mating partner, and these are like the characteristics why you are chasing for that mating partner, and basically to procreate further. But the problem arises when these like modern problems comes in, and then people like are not able to think on their own, and most of their thinking are just based on the perceived things which they see in the media. And I think
Yes.
that's the, I think, problem you highlight, and then you like love to solve that kind of thing. You mentioned about like a very important thing, like one of the characteristic is like to look young, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
it different between men and women? Because I personally think there should be some sort of difference. This is my opinion that women are more pressurized to look young throughout their life compared to the counterpart as a men. Men are not pressurized to look young. They tend to be like, just be more muscular and everything. Like a man who looks, pretty old and with a gray hair looks like he treated as a handsome guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it like difference between like being young and between men and women?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have data to suggest as much, right? This is why even when we look at partners in relationships, it's very typical for the man to be a few years older than the woman in heterosexual
Mhm.
partnerships. Um, some of it has to do with reproductive, you know, patterns, and that
Mhm.
women have a very limited time span actually in our
Yeah.
current society where they can have children, right?
Mhm.
Because higher education is valued and treated as increasingly necessary. So that means you're in school,
Mhm.
many men and women until they're in their 20s. And
Yeah.
then reproductive capacity starts to decline in your mid 30s, actually. So
Mhm.
there's really, for many, women, like this sort of 10-year period,
Mhm.
if they're going to have children. And even though that's biological, and there are workarounds. So sometimes women
Mhm.
freeze their eggs, or women certainly have been able to conceive and have children in their 40s. But still, it does increase the pressure, I think, on women when
Yep.
they're thinking about partnering. And it's not irrelevant to men. We know that when men have children and they're older, that they also are more vulnerable to some health problems and
Mhm.
disabilities, but it's the window is wider for men,
Yep.
and so I think that's just one of potentially a number of concerns that contribute
Right.
to us thinking about men and women differently.
Okay. Okay. And where does then the masculinity part comes in? Because that's also important on the men counterpart then, because in the current society, women tends to get attracted towards a person who just doesn't look like, have a good body and everything, they also look for the masculine traits in a man. Does that, like, is that also a fact, like one of the biggest factor when this mating preferences comes in?
Well, I think some of this may be biologically driven, but some of it is also socially created in that historically women have been valued for their appearance more than men have been, whereas men have been valued for their ability to provide for a family. And so that then has, again, I'm not saying that it's the most important thing in the current society, but it's still not irrelevant because we have a very long history as human beings of thinking about what men and women in heterosexual relationships bring to those relationships. And because women can bear and have children and feed children, they're often then delegated to those roles, whereas that puts men, at least historically, in the position of having to do other sorts of supporting of the family with other resources.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, so like coming back to the body image part, like the one of the arguments which I've heard, like it may be like controversial because I don't know about this and I want to hear from the person who has done a lot of research in that. People treat people critique body image issues, like like is it, it's just a reason for the lazy people to not being fit and like not work out, not being like eat healthy and everything. Like what do you say, like are these people understanding body image in a wrong way, and if they want to understand it in a right way, what's the right way?
Yeah, I think that that's sort of a narrow view of why people have the bodies or appearances they have. We do know that a lot of our physical features are very much genetically determined, although not 100%, right? So, like your height is about 80% genetically determined, and your weight is between about 50 and 80%. There's more variability. But there are some people who are going to be more slender, and it doesn't really matter what behaviors they participate in. And there are some people who are going to be bigger, and it probably doesn't really matter that much what they do either. So this idea that like we can control our appearances and the size of our bodies is really kind of a myth, and it's very much embedded in a consumerist society where if we think we can control these things, then we're also going to be vulnerable to people selling us, diet plans, supplements, beauty aids, cosmetics, certain kinds of clothing. I mean, the list goes on. Like this is, a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Capitalistic country, yeah.
Yeah, multiple industries. It's not just one
Yeah.
industry. So this idea that we can, control our appearance, and there's all these things we can do, and there's just more and more of them with more technology.
Yeah.
It can cost a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. I think again, like the dating industry also like capitalizes on this part, especially with like men, because height is a like very big issue when it comes to like and that's also part of a body image. And I've seen a lot of men being so insecure about their heights, like 6 feet is the criteria, and then social media comes in. People on social media are posting videos, like people are going to women and asking like, "What's the minimum height you like?" And they say like 6 feet, and it again like make those men insecure about like their body image, and they're not able to just cope up with that part. And I think that's the other part. There is some sort of, I believe that there's some sort of limit to what you can change in your body,
Yeah.
and other than that then you can't do it. Like being a healthy person is better than like being just chasing all these things. Like there is always genetic potential to your genes, but when you see these kind of problems in like young, because I think most of the time your most of the researchers are among the ages of like teens and all these people, so they are on the social media and they see all these people out there like with a toned body and all these things, and they become insecure because majority on the, if we just see the normal distribution and the bell curve, majority people live in that particular region where they're not as toned as it's seen on the Instagram. What do you suggest to those people? Exactly what's that problem, and how do you suggest those people to cope up with those problems?
So we call this social comparison when you see people in your social surrounding, and that may be in real life or it may be on social media, and you compare yourself to those people, and then the result is that you feel less good about yourself. Or at least that's the way it tends to work. It doesn't have to, but it does tend to work that way. And there are a variety of antidotes, and one of them is, of course, just to avoid the context where you're apt to compare yourself. So it's valuable to spend less time on social media, for example, right? Or to really work to alter the information that's in your newsfeed in your social media platforms, so that you're not going to be comparing yourself to celebrities or people who there's no reason to believe that you would look like or have the same lifestyle as. The other thing you can do, of course, is just acknowledge what you're doing, right? If you are engaging in social comparison and you're realizing, when I compare myself to this kind of person, it makes me feel bad, then some sort of cognitive behavioral therapeutic techniques can be useful, and you can learn to implement in your own life, where you stop yourself from perseverating about those thoughts. You try to rationally think about the fact that, celebrities in particular are celebrities because they're extraordinarily unique typically and really attractive, and they are paid and valued for their appearance, whereas most of us go through life with a different job entirely, right? Like, we're not paid for our appearance. So there's no reason to believe that that's a good comparison for us, right? And yet those are the people who are highly visible in a lot of the media. And so I think we have to, then stop ourselves from making those comparisons once we start, and say, listen, like, this is not my comparison group. Like, this is like, it's almost like trying to compare yourself to a different species or something, right? Like, if you were a dog and you were trying to compare yourself to a cat, like, it doesn't make any sense. You're never going to be a cat, right? So it's sort of the same way with, I think, a lot of celebrity and media culture.
Yep. I think, there was some lag. I was not able to listen to the last part. I'm not sure if it's my internet connection.
I'm okay over here. Nothing happened here.
Yeah, okay. I think, it's good now. So I think, you're absolutely right on that part. But I personally believe, like, this question is like very personal to me. Like, what, even though, like, I trained my brain, just to not look at all these things on the social media, but still somehow, like, you live with your friends, and let's say, even if I'm out in the world and, like, looking for a partner, that sort of insecurity again will come to my mind, even though I have prepared myself not to focus on these things. But still, that thing, like, comes to my mind. Like, there will be some point that it will be in my mind. Okay, like, for men, especially height, men also lose, like, hair sometimes. So these are, like, insecurities which people have. uh, so you said, like, about, like, the therapeutic treatment and all these things, but again, do you think, like, people are ready right now to go for this? And I think this is, like, one of the good solutions. But do you think that it's possible for people to, like, own up and just go to for the sessions?
I mean, it's not that you necessarily need to actually engage in therapy to use some of the techniques of therapy to help you cope with insecurities, right? And I think it's important to appreciate that we all have insecurities. And I've interviewed celebrities and influencers and Olympians in my work, and even they will say, I have
Yeah,
insecurities.
even if you're perfect, yeah,
So
exactly, yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
not that it ever ends, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
always something more or different or better. And I mean, I was talking to this young man who was an Olympic swimmer once,
Hmm.
and in peak physical shape, adorable in his 20s. I can say that because I'm old enough to be his mom. And and he was talking about his insecurity and how, as he became an Olympian, and his social circle changed, and he was around more high profile and celebrity types, it made him feel really bad. And he actually does some body image advocacy work because of that. But I mean, it just felt ridiculous to me that, of all people, an Olympian would say this. So I do think it's important to keep in mind too, that even what seems to look perfect, and the people who seem perfect, don't think they're perfect.
Yeah, I think it's a never-ending cycle. Like,
Yeah.
after you achieve something, you'll want something else, It's like, never ending
Exactly.
cycle. You just need to be like, again, like as I mentioned, like there is some sort of like genetic limitations to your body. You
Yeah.
could try and you be like have a healthy habits and like just go for it. But rather than that, like if you are like choosing to become something else which you can't be, and you're not accepting that, then it gonna cause a lot of like mental health issues for you, and it's not good for you like in a long term. And I think
Yeah.
one of the things which I recently read, and it's something which I got to know when I came to US for the first time, because like I'm from India and I haven't heard about this thing in India, something called Ozempic.
Hmm.
People use Ozempic a lot, and in India we don't have this concept. Maybe in like the very tier one cities, very few people, but it's a very big thing in US. What do you think about like Ozempic? What's your opinion on that?
So, I mean, there are a variety of weight loss medications now. So, Ozempic is one of them. Ozempic is often used for diabetes treatment. Actually, it does sometimes lead to weight loss, but there are other similar medications. And they're it's important to understand more about them, I think, right? So when we hear about them in reference to celebrities, celebrities often take them and then they lose a lot of weight pretty dramatically. But there's so much to say. I'm having a hard time knowing where to start. First of all, they're very
We
expensive.
have all the time. Just be comfortable, yeah. So,
Yeah, they're very expensive. So for most of us, health insurance won't pay for this, and they're expensive. So for most of us, we're not going to be able to afford these medications. Even if we can afford them, they typically have some pretty severe side effects. So, people, when they take these medications, a lot of the side effects include things like nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, lack of appetite, inability to eat certain foods without feeling sick, gastroparesis, which means like your bowels just don't really function normally and may even get kind of frozen.
yeah.
So some of this, if people take the medications, seems to improve across time, but not necessarily. And so when we're seeing celebrities who are using these medications, there's a really good chance that they may look quote unquote better, but they're suffering a great deal to look that way.
Yeah.
And I think for many people who, again, are not paid for their appearance, who are valued for other attributes, right? Like at my job, no one cares what I look like, right? That's not, as a professor, it's how smart am I? Am I responsive
Yeah.
to my students? Am I a good teacher? Am I,
Right.
right? Like no one rated my appearance as part of my application when I started at Rutgers 23 years ago. At least not that I know of, but so the point, but the point being, right, that there are certain fields where your appearance is the primary criterion people are using for hiring you.
You know what? One thing just came to my mind because you just mentioned that. I heard this thing. I'm not sure if this is true. There was a time that people were applying to one of the Ivy League, and they used to put their picture in that application. And then I think someone came across that they are selecting only those people who are looking good. Like there is some sort of bias in that. And I think eventually they stopped doing that. Is that a like true story?
I don't know if that's true, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, I do think that until pretty recently, sometimes pictures are used
Yep.
in hiring and maybe in college applications to try to get a more diverse, applicant group.
Yep.
So they're not necessarily used to rate attractiveness as much as, is someone of a different racial or ethnic background? Is someone going to add something to the community
Yep.
because they're not just like all the rest of us who are already here?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So certainly, especially with, online images being kind of easy to find for most people, I've definitely heard of that. But I
Right.
don't know. I don't know that about college applications. I would hope
Yeah.
that's not true. People respond to people they find attractive, right? It seems to be sort of innate.
Yeah, evolutionary thing. Yeah, you just get attracted to the attractive person. So yeah,
Yeah,
that happens.
it happens. But then also, what I like to point out to people, given what I do for a living, is that you can meet someone and think they're really attractive, right? And then if you get to know them and you really don't like their personality, they are no longer usually very attractive to you.
Yep.
So what's sort of the initial response to someone physically has the potential to change as you get to know them. And the opposite can be true, right? You can meet someone and not necessarily think that they're all that attractive, but then as you get to know them, you find them to be really attractive because their personality and who they are kind of shines through, and that becomes more important. So
Yeah, I think because we have a lot of adjectives to describe a human, it's not just being attractive.
right.
Because I think I've seen this, like, I've met a lot of, especially like women who tends to be like, from the societal view, like they are very beautiful. Some are like normal, like, but I've seen that few people have their like own personality. Like when you get to know them, you eventually just realize you don't have words how to describe them, but you like their,
Yeah.
when they are with you. So I think that's a thing which people don't realize. And I tell this to a lot of like young men whenever like someone reaches out to me that, I'm like very not confident enough. I think like I'm not attractive. My height is short and everything. It's like, it's not about that. Like it's about if you're confident within yourself, if you
Right.
know yourself well, then you don't need to like worry about other people because people see through you. People see how you think about yourself. They don't see how they think, like, because usually people don't have their own thinking. Their
Right. Or
thinking
people are
comes
focused
from
on themselves. People are
yeah,
feeling
yeah,
insecure about themselves just as much as they're worrying about somebody else.
yeah,
Right. So,
yeah. And I think like so recently I recorded something like in the philosophical context that you're hiding behind a block of wall, thinking that if you come out, people will be looking at you. But when you try to like come out of it, and if you see there are hundreds of walls already built and people are hiding behind that, and you realize that that's people are hiding behind their own insecurity, and you just
yep.
need to come out and you'll be like confident about it. And I think this happens a lot, and nowadays it's happening a lot, and I've seen this a lot, but I don't know like how to. It's a good start to tell people, but it will take some time to for them to like realize this thing. So yeah,
I mean,
uh,
some of it's maturity and experience in the world, right? I mean, I
yeah,
think this is why we see a lot of body image concerns emerge
hmm,
during the adolescent years. And
yeah,
it's not that they go away then after that. That's certainly not true.
hmm,
But we also do see some of the concern tend to plateau, at
hmm,
least for some of adulthood, because I think people start to appreciate that there are other things maybe that are more important. They start to have more experience with themselves, with other
hmm,
people, with the world. They feel more comfortable with who they are.
yep,
We gravitate towards contexts where, or very often anyways, we gravitate towards contexts where we're going to be successful, right?
hmm,
Even if you think of it like when you're in high school, you're taking all the classes, right? You have to take all of them. And then you go to college and you major in an area that's really interesting to you or something you're really good at. And then you're in a different setting where you might feel better about yourself because you're focused on this thing you're good at. And then when you get a job, that may be even amplified further, where you're working around people that are also good at the same thing you're good
yep,
at,
yep,
and they value you for that, and you feel comfortable about it because this is your expertise. And
yep,
so, some other aspects of the world are less unnerving to you because you've sort of found your niche in the world.
hmm,
And not that that works for everyone and not that that's perfect, but I do think that with maturity and experience, a lot of
yeah,
people can grow to feel more comfortable with themselves, and it helps to explain some of this and for people
hmm,
to understand and engage with even therapeutic techniques. But
yeah.
it's experience is important too.
Yeah, and I think people nowadays are not letting themselves to go out enough and meet new set of people. So they just bind themselves in a set of group where they think like this is the whole world, and they treat that sample size as the proof of the whole population. But if you think like those people are like not your type, they don't like because they have their own insecurities. Their opinions are coming from their own insecurities. I just suggest them like change the group of people. If you change the group of people and if you sit with the people who think that you they value your opinions and your thing, then I think you'll get that sort of validation, and then this problem won't arise at all in the first place. So I think that's one of the things. But you mentioned about this age part, and I think this is like really interesting because I have been reading a lot of evolutionary biology stuff about how things changes when you evolve, and I have seen the choices people make with their mating partner and with their decisions of to like being who their friend will be in the future. And I've like especially in the mating partner sense, I've seen that initially people chase for that glory, which is highlighted, but eventually after the age of 27, 28, 29, their priorities change, and now they want something different in their life. Is it right? Is it true to say that?
I mean, I don't know of an exact age in terms of
Yeah.
priorities changing. That's a little bit outside the scope of my expertise. I do know from my own experiences that yes, your priorities change, right, as you
Yeah.
get older, right? When you're younger, you tend to care more about the other person's status and appearance
Yeah.
and maybe more superficial things, and that's often less the case
Mhm.
later in life. But there is also research to suggest that
Mhm.
there are insecurities that are linked with aging, and we're starting to understand this more in terms of women. So, like I said, there may be some, you know, increasing insecurities during the adolescent years in terms of body image, and they may sort of plateau in adulthood, but then aging may exacerbate or introduce new insecurities. Because I think one thing we don't talk about enough
Mhm.
as a culture is that we keep changing throughout life, right? Like the
Yeah.
ideals of especially how we should look are
Mhm.
very stagnant, right? And
True.
even in celebrity culture, if you look at, celebrities that are 50 or 60, they often look very young still because they've had a lot of cosmetic procedures done.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about in a very adaptive way the possibility that our bodies, in terms of both their form and functionality, are going to constantly change, and there's going to be some decline because that's
Mhm.
just a natural part of the aging process.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of resistance to that, or feeling like you're not fitting in, or you don't look as good as you should if you're
Mhm.
not trying to resist all that.
Yeah, and what's the reason, like especially in women, that they are so much worried about being old and aging? I've seen that like with my friends also. They're like 27, 28, and they're like, we are old. I'm like, no, you're not old yet. It's a lot of time for you. But why are they feared so much?
I mean, like I said, I think for women in particular in our recent history, but
Mm.
perhaps throughout history, women have been valued for their appearance. And
Hmm.
when women age, their appearance no longer matches the cultural ideals, right?
Right.
The cultural ideals tend not to incorporate many of the normal elements of aging. Just think about, your people's hair turning gray. For
Yeah.
women, that's, having gray hair is not a beauty ideal. Some people do it, and of course, some people, well, everyone's hair turns gray eventually. But some people will
Yeah.
will conceal that, and others won't.
Uh-huh.
But I think that a lot of it just comes down to what women have been valued for, and so
Yeah.
those ideals are hard to resist too. You
Yeah.
know.
And I think I was reading about your book. Like, I think your latest book is adultish, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Are you working on something else right now,
I
which we'll be
am.
seeing in future? What's that? Do
Yeah.
you want to reveal it?
Sure. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
have the Body Image book for girls, which came out in 2020.
Uh-huh.
A new edition of that is coming out next year, 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm currently writing a body image book for women. So for women as they experience aging, which is, of course, part of why this is on my mind.
Yeah.
Also because I'm living it, I guess. But there's very little, you know, I think, like I said, cultural acceptance of the idea that we just keep changing,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's for the better and sometimes it's not, sometimes it's because our health declines.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of messaging about resisting change as opposed to
Right.
viewing it as normative.
Right. And um, Because like I was reading about adultish, and like you were talking about especially like the people who are in the age between 15 to 25, like that sort of range. And what kind of like aging is, I think, not one of the factor which people worry about in that age. What are the things like people more like worried about? Men, I understand, like maybe the height and all these kind of issues. One of the biggest factor is like being obese and being too thin. Like when body image comes to my mind, this concept before not talking to you is like, okay, someone is fat, someone is thin, and they're just worried about their body. So is that like what I'm thinking right now? Is that correct, which you talked about in your book?
I mean, I think it's more extensive than that, right? So it's not just body
Yeah.
size.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything about our physicality.
Yeah.
So, among young people, they may be concerned about body size. They also may be concerned with fitness, right? And this we see
Yeah.
among
Yeah.
men and women, right? So
Yeah.
do they have muscles where they want to have muscles? Do they,
Yeah.
have certain body shapes, not just sizes.
Right.
Are they in good physical shape? That's also valued by young people.
Mm-hmm.
Are they attractive to potential romantic partners,
Yeah.
right? People they want to be attractive to.
Mm-hmm.
So we see all of that coming into play. And it's, among young adults, there's a lot of transitions that people experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they may leave home for the first time and
Mm-hmm.
live alone. They may be living amongst peers and friends,
Yeah.
in a way they haven't before. They may be in charge of their health behaviors in a way that they
Yeah.
haven't before, right? Like they don't have a mom or a dad, making them a healthy dinner. They have to
Yeah.
do that all on their own.
Right.
They may be pursuing their own educational and career path.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's less prescribed than at that point, right? Growing up, it's like your parents told you you're going to this school, and it was all kind of set for you, perhaps.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of these transitions in the early adult years that are exciting, but also can
Yeah.
be stressful and can, I think, lead to some insecurities, especially if things
Mm-hmm.
aren't going as one would like.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we always prepare young adults as well as we need to
Uh-huh.
for just taking good care of themselves and both their physical and mental health,
And then, yeah.
and also not being afraid to admit, like, I don't feel good, whether that's I don't feel good mentally or I don't feel good physically,
Right.
right? Like, what do I do, right? I
Yeah.
think young people aren't always great at knowing like how to get the resources they need when something's not going well.
Yeah, and I think one of the like, especially in the young, this subset, the most influential person in their life is the parents, right? And as a parents, their duty is to like make the child comfortable within himself, right,
Hmm.
or within herself. As a mother, like what is like one of the thing which you want to tell to people that and you have seen through like different case studies, and you want to like tell this to people that what, make sure that you are not doing this, and rather than do this.
Well, I think a lot of us parents of my generation grew up in households where there was a lot of self disparagement. And, whether it be, oh, I look so fat, or oh, I'm not good at this, or oh, I'm awful, or, I can't eat that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and so we saw that, and it's very easy to then be inclined to reproduce that, right? That just feels like the sort of normal way people talk to themselves is mostly
Mm-hmm.
negatively. But if we do that in front of our children, then we just perpetuate that sort of transmission of intergenerational self hate. And it's not adaptive, it's not helpful. Research suggests it's not motivating. So, what we really need to be careful of, I think, as parents, is that we take good care of ourselves and we try to teach our children to take good care of themselves, to be self respecting, to engage in behaviors that are healthy because they want to, because that's what they should do, because that's what they deserve.
Right.
So not as a form of punishment, but just because you deserve to nourish yourself. You deserve to try to be active. You deserve to get enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
All the sorts of health behaviors that fall within our control, or at least sometimes may fall within our control. We want to encourage that as opposed to being self-disparaging. And so I think how we talk to ourselves as adults, then, we're modeling that for our kids. But then also we want to offer younger people a sense that our love for them is not conditional, right? That it doesn't
Yeah,
matter,
it's the most important thing.
that it doesn't matter if they gain weight or lose weight or win first place or are good at sports or not good at sports. I mean, there's all these sort of value-laden judgments the world will attribute to them. But as, a parent or an aunt or a teacher or whatever, if you can offer a more unconditional sort of safe space for a young person to feel that they are loved no matter what, then that is, I think, really a gift that will help to boost not just their body image, but their mental health in general.
Yeah, because a young child sees the world through their parents' eyes, and if those eyes are distorted, then the view will be also distorted. So like they need to make sure that whatever he's or she is seeing, it should be like coming from a like better view and better vision, like what they want to see exactly in the world. Because if they are treated this conditional basis which you just mentioned, then they'll be thinking that out in the world also like they need to satisfy some sort of condition to get that sort of validation from people.
Right.
And if they're not able to achieve that, then that's a very big problem. So yeah, I completely like agree with this. You talked about a diet a lot. What exactly, like what's this scam of diet plans and all these things are like happening? And it's because this doesn't help people, and it like deteriorates their mental health. because because what exactly is happening is they think, okay, I'm not doing good with my body, I need to change something. And to change something, they go on internet, someone sells them something, and now they are motivated, now they feel good about it. They haven't done anything yet, but now they have felt good about it. But now they start doing it and they don't see the results, because it's not like just that individual thing which they are focusing on, that promise which the other company has made, and eventually that deteriorates their mental health more, which was earlier. So what exactly is that? Like, you have done extensive research on that and I was listening to it. So yeah, please tell me about that.
Yeah, so it can become this sort of just cycle of false hope, people sometimes say, where, there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself or with making some sort of effort to improve yourself, right? I think we all do this and it feels good, right? I mean, just the other day I said, as soon as the semester is over, I'm going to be more organized, right? And, it feels good to try to do something better, whatever that may be. So there's nothing wrong with that per se. A lot of it has to do with then when it comes to diet, the approach we take. And like you said, you go online and you do a search, and most of what you're going to see is going to be very extreme and not sustainable. And there's going to be a lot of false promises made, right? If you do this for 15 days, you're going to lose 15 pounds or, whatever, right? So it's very extreme. It's very compelling. Right? I understand people may feel bad about themselves, and it's compelling then to think they found a solution that will leave them not feeling so bad. But then those really extreme changes to our behaviors, whether it be cutting out all carbohydrates or
Keto diet.
engaging in certain kinds of activities, all of that is unpleasant. It's really unpleasant, right? I mean, it can make you really miserable.
Yeah,
And so people don't stick with it, right? Then they start to quote unquote cheat. And then, they any sort of, quote unquote progress they made, it usually then doesn't persist. And the data is just so incredibly clear that most of these attempts at behavioral changes with the goal of weight loss actually result in weight gain, because as we deprive ourselves, then sort of the natural response to deprivation is to want to indulge, right? And so like if you say, I'm not going to have any carbohydrates, and maybe you do that for a while, maybe you lose some weight, right? But then something happens. Right? There's someone at your house makes some fresh bread and it's just too tempting to resist, or it's a holiday and you want to have the cake, or, whatever it may be. Then when you have that, you're going to have more than you would if you hadn't been depriving yourself, because you've felt like, oh, I just want this so bad. And it's normal to want those things because there's nothing wrong with wanting those things, right? I mean, carbohydrates are a really fast energy source for our bodies, which is, and they make us feel good often, actually, right? They give our brains energy and our bodies energy. So this sort of push and pull or back and forth of I can't do this or I can't have this, and then oftentimes overindulging to compensate. Sort of the end result usually is that no positive changes are actually made. And I think what people don't realize is that if you look at short-term studies, right, if you follow people for a week or 2 weeks, that maybe it looks like this is working, right? But then if you look a year later or 2 years later, no, it's over. That moment came and went. It's done. No one's sticking to that plan anymore a year or two later. And it can really have a negative effect on metabolism, right? When people go back and forth, up and down in terms of these eating patterns and restraining themselves from eating certain things and at certain times and gaining and losing weight. It's not good for us really physically in terms of our metabolic health, but then it's also not good for us psychologically because the restriction can be really demoralizing and make you cranky and just kind of miserable. And then when you kind of break your own rules, whatever rules you've decided you're following, you also feel bad. So like there's just, different levels of feeling bad that you can keep cycling through. And there's just really usually no good result, which isn't to say that people don't sometimes change their behaviors and stick with them, right? It is possible. We know that, for example, that a lot of times people who are smokers want to quit smoking. They know it's not good for them, but it will take them usually about 7 to 9 attempts to quit smoking before they actually do. So it's difficult, but it's possible, right? And I think the same could be said, like if you really want to change your dietary patterns, you can, but you probably really have to think of it in a sustainable way, not in a super extreme way, because food is not the same as nicotine, right? Like we need food. You can't just give it up.
Yeah. And you talk about intuitive eating. What exactly is that? Intuitive eating and like some sort of, having a planned something, but it's not very extreme and it like becomes sustainable for us. You, I think, talk about this in your book, right?
Yeah, so intuitive eating is essentially what we're born doing for the most part, right? We're born as infants. We cry when we're hungry. We want someone to give us food. They feed us, and we stop when we don't want anymore. And then, for a variety of reasons, we're not good at eating that way throughout life. And by the time kids are even about 4 years old, most of the research suggests that the time of the day factors in. Because we get in sort of socially prescribed meal habits, right? Like you wake up and you eat, and then you have like a snack, and then you have a lunch, and right, all these things become habits, and it keeps us from attending to our physical cues as much. And for people who have dieted in particular, then they're less able to attend to their physical cues because they've denied those cues. They've tried to ignore them so much. But our bodies are pretty good at telling us when we're hungry and when we need food and when we're not. And so, I mean, intuitive eating is sort of a larger framework, and that's like the oversimplified view of it. But in general, it's I think important that it frames our bodies as, you can trust your body. Your body will tell you if you are hungry, right? And there are exceptions. So if you've been in the throes of an eating disorder, if you have certain health conditions, you may not feel hungry. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't eat. You should eat. But most people's bodies are actually quite good at this. So it's just a matter of sort of tuning in and understanding that you can trust your body.
Yeah, but like even if someone wants to like incorporate some sort of healthy eating habits, what's the best way? Like, you can't focus on the diet, right? But there should be something telling me, okay, you know what, like don't eat junk foods, okay? Have some sort of protein in your diet and all these kind of things. But still, everything we see on internet, it's more about, there are some people who are telling you the right eating habits, but how do you separate those two things and select the right one? Intuitive thinking, I just like sorry, intuitive eating, I understood like it's more about your innate evolutionary way of eating. But again, if I want to like make some healthy choices, like I'm not going on to the extreme side, but still I want to make some choices. How can I do that?
I mean, I think most basic nutrition people know, right? Like you of course can see a registered dietitian or a nutritionist if you need help trying to understand what would be good food choices for you. But I think most of us know, right? If you go to a restaurant and you get a sandwich and they say you can have a salad or chips, you know that the salad is more nutritionally valuable than the chips. Like this is not rocket science. And it's okay to not always choose the most nutritional option because food should be fun and enjoyable too. But if you're trying to make behavioral changes, then I usually tell people to just think about what their typical habits are, right? Maybe even make some notes, like what do you typically have for breakfast? What are your, typical activity habits? And don't think about changing it all tomorrow, but think about it in terms of, is there just like one little change that I could
Right.
make, right?
Yeah, slow, like point by point, like not
Point by
everything at
point.
once. Yeah.
Because those are the kinds of things that you can sustain usually,
Yep. Yeah.
right? And a lot of times it helps to add things, not take things away. We do better with habits that involve addition instead of subtraction. And so, what I mean by that is making it a habit to always eat some kind of fruit every day. So add in fruit, right? Like a lot
Yeah.
of us don't eat enough
Yeah.
fruit probably, right?
Yeah.
Or to add in some kind of exercise, right? To
Right.
try to go on a walk, or go to the gym or take some kind of exercise class with a friend or a dance class or, whatever it may be. Join a sports team. But adding in those things and trying to then keep them and then seeing if they work for you,
Yeah.
right? And then from there you can gradually add in other things if you want.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of like just eliminating things
Yeah.
tends to not work very well.
Yeah, I think this was like really explained in one of the books. If you know about this, Atomic Habits, and Atomic Habits talk about this, like adding things one by one, and it becomes like compounding in nature, and eventually you become a better person by just doing one thing at a time for a certain period of time. So I think yeah, this exactly like advocate the same idea of doing rather than just changing everything and eventually like not sticking to it, and that's the issue. It's not about changing, it's about like not sticking to it in like future. So yeah, I think that's one of the issue. And like the way you're explaining this body image and like all the issues, it's so intuitive in nature, and like I completely understand what exactly you're trying to communicate. But on social media I've seen a lot of people like people who are like not healthy in their like life, not having a good lifestyle, and they are just, because of this body positivity, they are just hiding behind this fact of body image. Okay, you know what, like I'm comfortable with my body even though I'm not doing anything about it. Okay, even I'm not taking that one step of changes in my life, but I'm comfortable about it and I want to be comfortable. Don't tell me anything about me. Like, but then that is something which creates that controversial idea of the body image, which but today I just got understood. Like, what do you think about that part, those people who are just hiding behind this fact of body image?
Well, I think that it's important to be open-minded about what a healthy body image means,
Yeah.
right? And we actually really in this literature try not to even use the word healthy per se because a lot of us are healthy or we're not, and that's not necessarily a choice, right? That has to do with a lot of factors that may be both genetic and circumstantial. But so you can have a healthy body image and feel comfortable in yourself and be doing your best to take care of yourself and be self-respecting. And it may not look to the outside world that you are meeting some certain standards of attractiveness, but that's not the same thing, right? I mean, most of the time when people are aiming to meet those standards or beauty ideals, they have to actually engage in unhealthy behaviors to get there.
Yeah.
So you can, you can look like a heavier person. You can look like a person who doesn't attend to their appearance. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a positive body image, right? It just means that you're not buying into the cultural ideal of beauty. And in fact, that can be really protective to not buy into the cultural ideal of beauty.
Yeah.
So it's more complicated than just, how you look.
Yeah, and I think there's always like the two sides of it. The extremist part who are not exactly talking how it should be talked, and then there are people like you, like who are talking from the both the perspectives and coming up with a sustainable solution. And that's, I think, very important for anyone to follow. Have you come across any stories or something? Like, I haven't read the book fully, so like some really interesting story in your or case study which you came across and it was stuck to you.
Oh, all of them. I mean, I talked to so many people in the process of writing these books, and I think they all impact me, and that's so much why I want to tell their stories in the books. For the book I'm working on right now for women, I talked to a woman recently who was undergoing cancer treatment, and she talked to me about, she was a young woman. She wasn't an old person, how much she had changed physically and how much she had been weakened by the cancer treatment, and yet how she felt really good in a lot of ways psychologically because she had a newfound appreciation for, what her body was capable of. And what she wanted to place value on then for the rest of her life. It was like she had a reset, right? It's like she had this, near-death experience, literally, and then a reset in terms of like, well, God, what is important? What do I value? And it's, she's like, I don't even have hair now. It's not my hair. It's not all those things that people would tell you are so important. It's, my relationships. It's just trying to be able to be active because I want to be able to do things. So I think, that was a really impactful story. It's not in a book that's published yet, because like I said, I'm working on that book. But, I think everyone has a body image story. Everyone has their own, it's kind of cliche, but everyone has
Some sort of insecurity.
everyone has their own journey, right? Because we're all very imperfect, messy people, and we all have our own insecurities. And hopefully, with age and experience, for the most part, we get better and work through some of it, but not always,
Yeah. No, I think this cancer story, because I have seen people, especially women, because again, the beauty and the body image issue is very big in among women. It's not very big in men. I'm not sure if I'm undermining men, but this is what I believe. And I have seen especially one of the few cases of breast cancer, and it devastated those people. They lose hair, the body doesn't look as same. And I've seen those people not coming out of their house, and I was shit, wow, what exactly, how can we solve this? What can I do to make her motivated and feel accepted in the society? Because they think now I'm different, people will be staring at me and all these things. And she was not prepared for that. No one told her that this will be happening, and this was all new for her. And I was so much worried about her. But I think it's just coming through your insecurities, and eventually it's like winning. You are just in a journey, and I think eventually you're just gonna win. And I think I really want to read about that book, and especially I'll share that book to my mom, when you write it. So I think, is there anything which I missed? And I think it's very important based on your research, which people should know, because whatever I had, I think I've covered most of the things from my end.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just reiterate that, body image isn't just about our physical appearance, that it's so much of an interplay between sort of the physical and the psychological. And people often think that if I improve my physical appearance, then it's going to improve my body image, but it doesn't work that way often,
Never.
right? We have to kind of work on who we are on the inside and our psychological health, and that sort of will contribute to a confidence, right? And like we said, an ability then to interact with people, be comfortable with ourselves, form meaningful relationships and connections, and so most of those products and advertisements and everything we see on social media are not going to fix our body image. Really, only we can do that.
Yeah, and I'll try my best to like communicate this idea. Like especially I never communicate in the sense of body image, but I think body image is one of the thing which affects your confidence and your like all the insecurities. And I try to like understand a lot of young generation, young people. A lot of people reach out to me like, how can I be confident? And most of the young men issues are like, how can I find a dating partner? Those are like one of the most issues if I go on internet right now. And I just tell them like to just be comfortable and be confident in your own way. Just build something on your own. Just learn something so that you can be comfortable about yourself and you know that you are something. Yeah, it's a really great idea. And I think I thank you so much for doing this with me. I know like it's almost like end of the day and I wanted to do it early, but I had some other commitment. But thank you so much for giving me your time. I had a really, really, really great conversation with you. So,
Great. Yeah, no, it's been my pleasure.
yeah, same here. All right.